Good morning. We are here today to present Chapter 7, named Historical Discourse Analysis, written by Laurel J. Brinton in the Handbook of Discourse Analysis. This group is conformed by Oñate, Victor Valenzuela behind the cameras, and Denise Molina, who is talking. As I said, this chapter was written by Laurel J. Brinton, who is an American-born Canadian linguist, currently professor and chair of the English language program in the Department of English at the University of British Columbia.
Attention, I will follow the next order, which starts with the introduction, covering the scope of discourse analysis and the scope of historical discourse analysis. And second, we are going to cover the overview of different approaches, which are historical discourse analysis, discourse-oriented historical linguistics, and diachronically oriented discourse analysis.
After those brief introductions and reviews, we will see in-depth analysis, every approach, the historical discourse analysis, the proper discourse-oriented and historical linguistic, and diachronically oriented discourse analysis, followed by the conclusion.
The primary attempt of this chapter is to describe historical discourse analysis, but describing and exploring its relationship with historical linguistics and their mutual contribution. First, let's see the scope of discourse analysis itself. The author begins by saying that it's important to make a distinction between pragmatics and discourse. Sometimes it's said that pragmatics encompasses discourse, some other times it's said that it is the reverse. The general agreement is that discourse analysis is more static, more text-centered, and more interested in the product, while pragmatics is more user-centered, more dynamic, and more interested in the process of text production. Nevertheless, the author emphasizes that it is important to understand the term broadly as the linguistic analysis of naturally occurring, connected spoken or written discourse. Thus, discourse analysis is concerned with the level that above the sentence, with intersentential connections and global rather than local features. Now we can see what is the scope of historical discourse analysis. Here the author states that it is a cross-disciplinary field that may be approached from many different views. That's why first we are going to see an overview of these different approaches to then focus on what each approach focuses on. The first approach is named historical discourse analysis in the proper sense. This approach involves an application of discourse analysis to language history by studying discourse in earlier periods of time. It is essentially synchronic, meaning that it focuses on a specific language stage. However, the emphasis remains on discourse. Within this approach, there are two different steps: mapping form to function, that is the explanation of discourse functions of particular historical forms, or mapping function to form, that is the identification of historical forms which are exponents of different discourse structures, discourse functions. The second approach is discourse-oriented historical linguistics. This approach involves an application of discourse analysis to historical linguistics by studying the discourse pragmatic factors in language change or the motivations behind diachronic changes. Here the focus is on discourse matters, yet the emphasis remains on language change. Finally, the third approach, although less well developed than the others, is known as diachronically oriented discourse analysis and represents a synthesis of discourse and diachrony and studies discourse markings, functions, and structures changes over time. Now, as I said, we will talk about a more in-depth analysis of the different approaches. The first approach involves a study of several issues. The first is discourse markers. Discourse markers, also known as mystery particles, have been present in several Romance and Germanic languages, such as Old Saxon or High Germanic, Latin, Middle, Old, and of course Modern English. Their primary feature is that they are considered to be of an uncertain word class and an indeterminate word class and uncertain meaning. However, they almost inevitably have a function which relates to a unit larger than the sentence, that is to say the whole text or a paragraph of the text. Discourse markers have different functions depending on the language in which they are found. These can be textual functions, the ones that are related to the structure, or interpersonal functions, which are related to the relationship between the hearer and speaker. Thus, discourse markers involve words such as well, so, now, you know, and they can have these several different functions, such as, for example, foregrounder, dramatizer, sequencer of events, and so on. Another focus of study of discourse historical analysis are inflectional forms. The first focus is on verbal morphology. Discourse historical analysis has focused on tense aspect morphology because of its function in conceptualizing and placing events in time, especially what it is known as historical present, that is to say the use of present tense in past tense narrative. Historical present has traditionally been taken as a magical experience or as a vivifying, intensifying, or emphatic device. Naturally, depending on the language, can serve different functions, also depending on the form. Then, the tense aspect morphology, that is to say verbs, can have textual, expressive, or metalinguistic function depending on the use of perfective, non-perfective, and imperfective form. Then we move into pronominal forms. Pronouns have been studied regarding their anaphoric and referential functions. Similarly to tense aspect morphology, they can serve different functions depending on the language. That in this case can be at a micro-pragmatic level to encode status of the interlocutors, or at a macro-pragmatic level to express emotional. And as I said, similarly to discourse markers and tense aspect morphology, they can have different functions such as foregrounder, to negotiate social identities, to mark discourse boundaries, among others. And now my classmate will continue with the analysis of this first approach.
Continuing with the approach previously explained by my classmate, we're going to see this other areas covered in this approach, which are fixed phrases and clauses. In the first example, taken from Old English, we can characterize it as a discourse marker because it has characteristics of being a subsidiary foreground and at the same time showing a boundary of a new episode. The second example, which are expressions taken from Middle English, which were derived into, I think, it has been seen as at the same time as discourse marker, having the properties of showing intimacy and positive politeness. Another area of study of this approach is word order. That in Old English has been discovered the grammatical constructions of subject, object, and verb, subject, and object. These two terms are used in Old English to show and emphasize the foreground, and also to explain events which are main episodes or internal episodes with typical subjects. And on the other hand, we have the construction of a subject, verb, and object, which is used to show background, and it is used especially at the beginning of minor episodes. Another field of study is the text types of different points of historical points. In this area, we have the professor explained that a convention of text has been evolution during the time. We cannot assume for granted that conventions from previous stages can match with the ones that rule nowadays in this stage of the language. These conventions are defined by the following factors, which are language forms, topic, the situation, and the medium of the text. And now we're going to cover another perspective of the historical discourse, which is discourse-oriented historical linguistics. In the first point, we have discourse-driven change, in which we have a word order and grammaticalization. In word order, we have as this author suggests, we have synonymous syntactical forms, which means relatively the same. In these cases, people tend to use the most useful one, which is the case of the change of verb object to object verb in Germanic languages. In grammaticalization, we have changes which starts from conversation, which means local, to conventional, which means generalized rules. In this case, we have, for example, since, which in Old English was correct. It was stated as an adverb and then was transformed into a conjunction. We have the transformation at the same time of the meaning, which means from time tab to the following meaning, which means because. And the last area which covers this approach, we have the historical progression of the languages, which starts from discourse to morphophonetics. The first two areas, which are discourse and syntax, has been transformed by communicative needs, and the last ones, two last ones, has been attributed to phonological attrition. In this case, we have this author cites Gibbon, which states that this historical progression has been a task of fossilization, and all the syntax which exists nowadays is product of the fossilization of older stages of the language. Continuing and explaining the other approach is my classmate Victor Valenzuela.
Yeah, thank you, Francisco. Well, the chronically oriented discourse analysis. This third type of historical discourse analysis examines the evolution of discourse marking over time, focusing on the development of individual discourse marking or changes in the system of discourse marking. This study arose from questions such as what is the source of discursive forms and what are the semantic and syntactic properties? What is the course of semantic and syntactic development? Do they follow principles of change? What changes they undergo? And how do they fare over time? The origin. In the study of discourse marking, all the information which answered the previous question, were classified into three principles or tendency in order to classify them according to their changes. The first tendency, where the meaning is situated in the external situation, to the meaning situated in the internal situation. The second tendency, where the meaning is situated whether in the external or internal situation, to the meaning situated in the textual or metalinguistic situation. And a third tendency, where the meaning is situated in the speaker's subjective attitude, belief, or perspective towards the situation. An example of this is the discourse marking let's, which has moved from a second-person imperative to a first-person hortative, finally to the discourse marking where the speaker is cognizant of the hearer. In general terms, research has found that in their development, discourse markers undergo many morphosyntactical and semantic changes within the process of grammaticalization. Here are 5 of these changes. The first one is decategorization, which is the loss of morphological or syntactical characteristic of the original word class. The second, the change from open class to closed class membership. The syntactic fixation, which is the loss of syntactic variability in word class. Divergence, which is the retention of lexical characteristics in some contexts and grammaticalization in other contexts. And finally, layering, which is the continuation of older, high grammaticalized forms next to newer, less grammaticalized forms. Changes in discourse marking. Changes in discourse marking are denoted in the study. This is due to the shift from one system to another. This is mostly related from the shift from oral to the written medium. As an example, particles such as now, however, and anyhow tend to replace explicit phrases such as and now, let me tell you, as topic changers in early modern English. The changes in text types. Although the study of text types has always included historical dimension, the studies mostly focus on the changes from the oral medium to the written, where oral is described as more involved, using private verbs and first and second pronouns, whereas written is described as more informational, using nouns, prepositional phrases, and long words. On the other hand, oral is described as situational dependent, using time and place adverbials, and written is described as more elaborated, using nominalization and WH relatives. Finally, the conclusion. Well, to sum up, the following challenge is presented at the end of the chapter, and this is to present a diachronical study in historical discourse analysis, which needs to be in the same level as the synchronical studies. Nowadays, as it stands today, historical discourse analysis can be divided in 3 strands. The first strand can be summarized as philology tempered by discourse. The second, which is historical linguistic tempered by discourse. And a final strand, which studies the origin, the development, and the changes in discourse marking. This final one is the richest and most rewarding aspect in the field of historical discourse analysis. Thank you.